The silence in courtroom 9 was suffocating. Then, from the back of the room, a voice cut through the tension like a blade. "I will defend her." Every head turned. Standing near the exit, still holding his driver's cap in trembling hands, was Daniel Reed. 35 years old. Dark hair and tired eyes. The man who'd been driving pharmaceutical CEO Catherine Monroe for exactly 6 months. At the defendant's table, Catherine sat alone, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. 60 years old. Silver hair pulled into a severe bun. A woman worth $4.2 billion. And now, completely abandoned. Her legal team had just walked out. All 8 attorneys from Whitmore & Associates, the most expensive firm in Boston, charging $7,000 an hour. Gone. And now her driver, a man she barely spoke to, was stepping forward to defend her. What nobody in that courtroom knew, what nobody could have possibly imagined, was that this moment would unravel the deadliest pharmaceutical conspiracy in American history. But before we dive into this story, I need to ask you something. Where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. And if you believe pharmaceutical companies shouldn't let people die for profit, hit that like button. Because if you don't, you're saying it's okay for them to kill for money. Is that what you believe? Subscribe right now. Because if you don't, stories like this disappear. And when it's your family member who needs a cure they're hiding, nobody will be there to tell that story either. Now here's what nobody saw coming. What made a driver with no law degree suddenly declare he'd defend a billionaire accused of killing 17,000 people? Let me take you back 6 months. Daniel Reed pulled the black Mercedes up to the front entrance of Monroe Pharmaceuticals headquarters at exactly 7:30 a.m. The same time he did every weekday morning. He stepped out, adjusted his uniform jacket, and opened the rear door. Catherine Monroe emerged. Designer suit. Cold expression. The kind of woman who didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Morning," Daniel said quietly. She didn't respond. She never did. Daniel had been driving for Catherine for 6 months, ever since the company hired a new transportation service. Before that, he'd been driving for a rideshare app, trying to make ends meet, trying to forget. He didn't tell the hiring manager about his past. About the law degree from Boston University he'd earned 10 years ago. About the 2 years he'd spent as a junior prosecutor. About why he'd walked away from it all. Some things were better left buried. But Catherine Monroe wasn't just any client. She was the CEO of Monroe Pharmaceuticals, one of the largest drug companies in America. And over the past 6 months, Daniel had heard things. Phone calls she took in the back seat, thinking he couldn't hear, or didn't matter. Conversations about clinical trials. About data. About things that made his stomach turn. 3 weeks ago, the lawsuit was filed. 17,000 families. 17,000 people who died from a heart medication called Cardaxil. The lawsuit claimed Monroe Pharmaceuticals knew the drug was deadly, knew it caused fatal heart attacks in certain patients, and buried the evidence to keep making billions. The media tore into Catherine Monroe like wolves. The press called her a murderer. A monster. Someone who valued profit over human life. Daniel read the articles during his breaks. And every time he looked at Catherine Monroe through the rearview mirror, he tried to see it. The monster. The killer. But all he saw was a woman who looked more tired every day. More isolated. More afraid. That morning, as Daniel drove her to the federal courthouse, she made a phone call. "Marcus, please. You can't do this." Her voice cracked. "I need you. The trial starts in an hour." Silence as she listened. "I'm innocent. You know I'm innocent. Marcus, please." The person on the other end hung up. Daniel saw it in the rearview mirror, the way her hand dropped, the way her face went pale. "Everything okay, Miss Monroe?" he asked quietly. She looked up, startled, as if she'd forgotten he was there. "My lawyers just quit." Daniel's hands tightened on the steering wheel. All of them? All of them. Why? Catherine laughed bitterly. Because defending me is career suicide. Nobody wants to be associated with the woman who killed 17,000 people. Did you? Daniel asked before he could stop himself. She met his eyes in the mirror. No. But it doesn't matter what the truth is anymore. They arrived at the courthouse. Daniel parked, opened her door. Catherine stepped out, her shoulders squared, her face a mask of composure. But her hands were shaking. Miss Monroe, Daniel said. She turned. Good luck. For the first time in 6 months, she almost smiled. Thank you, Daniel. Then she walked into the courthouse alone. Daniel sat in the car for a long moment. He shouldn't care. This wasn't his problem. He was just the driver. But something felt wrong. Something felt off. He pulled out his phone and did something he hadn't done in years. He started researching. Articles about Cardaxil. About the deaths. About the lawsuit. And the more he read, the more questions he had. The drug had been on the market for 8 years. Millions of people had taken it safely. Then suddenly, 3 years ago, deaths started spiking. Heart attacks. All in patients with a specific genetic marker. Monroe Pharmaceuticals claimed they didn't know about the genetic link until recently. The lawsuit claimed they'd known for years and covered it up. But if they'd known, why keep selling it? The lawsuits alone would cost more than the drug made. It didn't make sense. Daniel's phone buzzed. A news alert. Catherine Monroe's legal team abandons her hours before trial. He opened the article. Anonymous sources claimed the lawyers found damning evidence that proved Catherine's guilt and refused to participate in her defense. Daniel stared at the headline. Something about it felt staged. Too convenient. He got out of the car and walked into the courthouse. Security tried to stop him at the courtroom entrance. Sorry, sir. This is a closed proceeding. I'm Miss Monroe's driver, Daniel said. She might need me. The guard hesitated, then waved him through. Back row. Stay quiet. Daniel slipped inside and took a seat in the last row. The courtroom was packed. Reporters. Lawyers. Families of the victims, some wearing t-shirts with photos of their dead loved ones. Catherine sat alone at the defense table. 8 empty chairs beside her. Judge Richard Dalton entered. 72 years old. Gray hair. Hard eyes. He looked at the empty chairs and frowned. Miss Monroe, where is your legal representation? Catherine stood. Her voice was steady but quiet. They withdrew from the case this morning, Your Honor. I've been unable to retain new counsel. Then you're representing yourself? I don't know how to defend myself in a wrongful death suit, Your Honor. I'm a scientist, not a lawyer. You've had 3 months to prepare, Miss Monroe. Your Honor, please. I need time to find new representation. The lead plaintiff's attorney, Richard Brennan, stood up. Mid-50s. Expensive suit. Confident smile. Your Honor, the defense has had ample time. Miss Monroe's own lawyers abandoned her because the evidence is overwhelming. We move to proceed. Judge Dalton nodded. Motion granted. Miss Monroe, you will defend yourself or accept a default judgment. Your Honor. I will defend her. The shout came from the back. Daniel was on his feet before he'd even realized he was standing. Every eye turned to him. Camera flashes went off. Reporters started whispering frantically. Judge Dalton's eyes narrowed. Who are you? Daniel Reed, Your Honor. His heart was pounding. I'm volunteering to represent Miss Monroe. Laughter erupted. Not polite chuckles. Full, mocking laughter. Richard Brennan actually laughed out loud. Your Honor, this is absurd. A driver can't practice law. Daniel walked down the center aisle. His hands were shaking but his steps were steady. I'm not currently practicing, Your Honor. But I am a member of the Massachusetts Bar. I was an assistant prosecutor for 2 years. The laughter died. Judge Dalton leaned forward. Mr. Reed, if you were a prosecutor, why are you driving a car? Personal reasons, Your Honor. That's not an answer. Daniel met his eyes. I left the legal profession because I stopped believing the system worked. Because I watched powerful people buy their way out of consequences while ordinary people got crushed. He paused. But watching someone face a rigged trial alone is worse than anything I walked away from. Rigged trial? Brennan shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is outrageous. Is it? Daniel turned to face him. Her lawyers quit the morning of trial. Anonymous sources leak damning evidence nobody's seen. Tell me, Mr. Brennan, does that sound like justice to you? Or does it sound like someone making sure she can't defend herself? The courtroom erupted. Judge Dalton slammed his gavel. Order! When the noise died down, the judge looked at Catherine. Miss Monroe, do you accept Mr. Reed as your counsel? Catherine was staring at Daniel like she'd never seen him before. Her eyes were wet. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I do. Judge Dalton sighed. Mr. Reed, I'm allowing this against my better judgment. You have 15 minutes to confer with your client. After that, we proceed. And if you're not prepared, I will hold you in contempt. Clear? Yes, Your Honor. As Daniel sat down beside Catherine, she grabbed his hand. Why? You don't even know me. No, Daniel said quietly. But I know what it's like when the system decides you're guilty before you get a chance to prove otherwise. Quick pause. If Daniel's courage doesn't move you to hit like, what will? And if you haven't subscribed, you're saying people like Daniel should stay silent. Is that really the side you want to be on? 15 minutes felt like 15 seconds. Catherine spoke rapidly, trying to condense 3 months of preparation into an emergency briefing. The drug is Cardaxil, she said. It's a heart medication. It's been safe for millions of patients. But 3 years ago, we started seeing deaths. All in patients with a specific gene variant called CYP2D6. How many patients have that variant? About 7% of the population. We didn't know about the connection until 18 months ago. What did you do when you found out? We immediately started a recall. We notified the FDA. We pulled the drug from the market. But the lawsuit claims we knew about it for years and covered it up. Daniel leaned forward. Did you? Catherine met his eyes. No. I swear to you, we didn't know. Then why did your lawyers quit? Her face paled. This morning, they showed me an email. It was supposedly sent from my account 3 years ago to our head of research. It said, and I quote, bury the CYP2D6 data. We can't afford another recall. Did you send it? No. I'd never seen that email before in my life. Then it's fabricated. They said it came from the company's server. They said it's authenticated. Daniel's mind raced. Who had access to your email account? My assistant. Our IT department. Maybe a dozen people. Who's your assistant? Nina Parker. She's been with me for 12 years. Time's up, the bailiff called. Judge Dalton struck his gavel. Mr. Reed, are you ready to proceed? Daniel stood. No. He wasn't ready. He'd been out of a courtroom for 8 years. He had no preparation, no discovery, no evidence. But he'd made a promise. Yes, Your Honor. Then deliver your opening statement. Daniel walked to the podium. He could feel every eye on him. The families of the victims. The reporters. Catherine, sitting alone at the defense table, her last hope resting on a man she'd barely spoken to. He placed his hands on the podium and looked at the jury. 12 faces. Regular people. People who'd already seen the headlines. Who'd already decided Catherine Monroe was a killer. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, he began. My name is Daniel Reed. And I'm going to be honest with you. 6 months ago, I was driving for a rideshare app, trying to pay rent. I never imagined I'd be standing here. He paused. I left the legal profession 8 years ago because I stopped believing in it. I watched powerful people buy justice while innocent people got destroyed. I walked away because I couldn't be part of that system anymore. So why am I here today? Why am I defending a billionaire pharmaceutical CEO? Daniel looked at Catherine. Because this morning, I watched her legal team abandon her. I watched anonymous evidence mysteriously appear just in time to destroy her defense. I watched the system do exactly what I always feared it would do. Decide someone was guilty before they had a chance to prove their innocence. Richard Brennan stood. Objection. This isn't an opening statement. Sustained, Judge Dalton said. Mr. Reed, get to the point. Daniel nodded. The point is this. Catherine Monroe is not guilty of murder. She's guilty of being wealthy and powerful and therefore an easy target. The real question you need to ask is simple. If she knew this drug was killing people, why would she keep selling it? The lawsuits alone cost more than the drug made. It makes no financial sense. No logical sense. He leaned forward. Someone is lying to you. Someone fabricated evidence. And by the end of this trial, I'm going to show you exactly who. He sat down. It wasn't polished. It wasn't perfect. But from the expressions on a few jurors' faces, Daniel knew at least someone was listening. Richard Brennan stood for his opening. He was everything Daniel wasn't. Polished. Confident. Prepared. Ladies and gentlemen, he said smoothly. This case is simple. Catherine Monroe knew her drug was killing people. She knew it for years. And she chose profit over human lives. He clicked a remote. A screen lit up with photos. Faces of the dead. Children. Parents. Grandparents. These are some of the 17,000 people who died because Catherine Monroe chose money over morality. We will prove she knew about the genetic defect. We will prove she ordered her staff to bury the evidence. And we will prove that she is responsible for every single one of these deaths. He sat down. The first witness was called. Dr. Martin Fletcher. Former head of research at Monroe Pharmaceuticals. He took the stand, looking nervous. Brennan walked him through his testimony. Yes, he discovered the CYP2D6 connection 3 years ago. Yes, he'd reported it to Catherine. Yes, she'd ordered him to bury the data. And do you have proof of this? Brennan asked. Yes. Fletcher pulled out a document. This is an email from Catherine Monroe ordering me to suppress my findings. The email was entered into evidence. Daniel's stomach sank. It looked real. Timestamp. Email headers. Everything. When it was Daniel's turn to cross-examine, he stood slowly. Dr. Fletcher, he said. You worked for Monroe Pharmaceuticals for how long? 15 years. And you were fired 6 months ago, correct? Fletcher shifted. I resigned. No, you were fired. For falsifying data on a different study. Isn't that true? Fletcher's face reddened. That was a misunderstanding. Daniel pulled out a document. This is your termination letter. It states clearly that you were dismissed for scientific misconduct. Would you like to read it to the jury? Brennan shot to his feet. Objection. Relevance? Your Honor, Daniel said calmly. If the witness has a history of falsifying data, that's directly relevant to whether we can trust this email. Overruled. Answer the question, Dr. Fletcher. Fletcher looked trapped. Yes, I was fired. And 6 months after being fired, you suddenly remember an email from 3 years ago? An email you never mentioned during any internal investigation? I forgot about it. You forgot that your boss ordered you to cover up thousands of deaths? Fletcher had no answer. Daniel turned to the jury. No further questions. As Fletcher stepped down, Daniel saw something in Brennan's eyes. Not anger. Not frustration. Fear. Someone was lying. And Daniel was going to find out who. The first day of trial ended at 5 p.m. As the courtroom emptied, Daniel sat at the defense table, surrounded by boxes of documents he hadn't had time to review. Catherine approached him slowly. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what you did today." "Don't thank me yet. We just started." "Why are you doing this?" "Really?" Daniel looked up at her. For 6 months, he'd driven this woman and barely spoken 2 words to her. Now he was risking everything to defend her. "Because 8 years ago, I prosecuted a case," he said. "A man accused of embezzling from his company. The evidence looked solid. Emails. Bank records. Everything. I pushed for the maximum sentence." He paused. 2 years later, we found out the evidence was fabricated. The man's business partner had framed him. He'd already served 18 months in prison. Lost his family. Lost everything. What happened to him? He killed himself, Daniel said quietly. 3 weeks after his release. Catherine sat down beside him. "That's why you quit." "I couldn't live with being part of a system that destroys innocent people." He looked at her. "And when I saw you sitting there alone, facing that jury, I saw him. And I couldn't walk away again." They sat in silence for a moment. "I need to ask you something," Daniel said. "This assistant of yours, Nina Parker. How well do you know her?" "She's been with me for 12 years. She's like family." "Family can betray you." Catherine shook her head. "Not Nina. She's the most loyal person I know." "Does she have access to your email?" "Of course. She manages my schedule, my correspondence, everything." "Then she could send emails from your account?" Catherine's face paled. "You think Nina set me up?" "I think someone did. And whoever it was needed access to your email, your files, your entire digital footprint." "But why would Nina do this?" "That's what we need to find out." Daniel pulled out his phone and made a call. It rang 3 times before a woman's voice answered. "Marcus Chen, Digital Forensics." "Sarah, it's Daniel Reed." Silence. Then, "Daniel? Holy shit. It's been years. How are you? I need a favor." "A big one." Sarah Chen had been Daniel's roommate in law school. She'd gone into digital forensics instead of practicing law. If anyone could trace that email, it was her. "I need you to examine an email," Daniel said. "It's supposedly from 3 years ago. I think it's been fabricated. Send it to me." "But Daniel, if someone faked it well enough to fool lawyers, it's going to be hard to prove." "I know. But try." He hung up and turned to Catherine. "I need access to your company's servers. Everything. Emails, logs, security footage. I can arrange that. And I need to talk to Nina." Catherine hesitated. "She'll be at my house tonight. Come by at 8. "I'll be there." As Daniel left the courthouse, a black SUV pulled up beside him. The window rolled down. Richard Brennan sat in the back seat, smiling. "Mr. Reed. Impressive performance today. What do you want?" "To offer you a deal. Walk away from this case. Your client will take a plea agreement. 5 years in prison, 200 million in fines. Everyone walks away. She's innocent. Brennan laughed. Innocent? Mr. Reed, there are 17,000 dead bodies. Someone has to pay for that. Why not the billionaire CEO? Because she didn't do it. Can you prove that? Daniel stared at him. Yes. Brennan's smile faded. You have no idea what you're up against. The families want blood. The media wants a villain. And Catherine Monroe fits perfectly. You can't win this. Watch me. The SUV drove away. Daniel stood on the courthouse steps, his hands shaking. He just declared war on one of the most powerful law firms in Boston. With no evidence. No preparation. No backup. What the hell had he gotten himself into? And let me just pause here for a second. If watching Daniel stand up to a corrupt system inspires you, hit that like button. And if you're watching without subscribing, you're saying you don't care if people like Catherine get destroyed by lies. Subscribe and be part of something that matters. At 8 p.m., Daniel pulled up to Catherine's house. Not a house. A mansion. 20,000 square feet overlooking the harbor. Security let him through the gate. Catherine met him at the door. Nina's in the study, she said. They walked through hallways lined with expensive art. Daniel felt out of place in his cheap suit and discount shoes. Nina Parker sat in a leather chair, her face pale. Mid-40s. Brown hair pulled back. She looked terrified. Nina, Catherine said gently. This is Daniel Reed. He's my attorney. He needs to ask you some questions. Nina looked at Daniel like he was a threat. What kind of questions? Daniel sat down across from her. I need to know about Catherine's email account. Who has access? Just me and the IT department. Anyone else? No. Have you ever sent emails from Catherine's account? Of course. All the time. That's my job. Have you ever sent an email without her knowledge? Nina's eyes widened. No. Never. I would never do that. Daniel watched her carefully. She looked genuinely shocked. Nina, 3 years ago, someone sent an email from Catherine's account ordering the research team to bury data about Cardaxil. Were you aware of that email? No. I'd never seen anything like that. Would you know if someone else accessed Catherine's account? The system would log it. Every login is recorded. Daniel leaned forward. Can you get me those logs? Nina looked at Catherine, who nodded. I'll have them to you by morning, Nina said. As Daniel left the mansion, his phone rang. Sarah Chen. Daniel, I've got something. That email you sent me? It's a forgery. Daniel's heart leapt. You can prove it? The metadata's been altered. Whoever made this was good, but not perfect. The timestamp doesn't match the server logs. It was created 6 months ago, not 3 years ago. Can you testify to that? Absolutely. But Daniel, if someone went to this much trouble to frame Catherine Monroe, they're not going to stop. Watch your back. The line went dead. Daniel sat in his car, his mind racing. The email was fake. Which meant someone had gone to extraordinary lengths to destroy Catherine. But who? And why? His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Stop digging or people you care about will get hurt. Daniel stared at the message. He didn't scare easily. But this was different. Whoever was behind this was willing to kill. The next morning, Nina delivered the server logs to Daniel. He spent hours going through them with Sarah Chan on a video call. Look at this, Sarah said, pointing to a login entry. 3 years ago, someone accessed Catherine's email from an external IP address. Not her office. Not her home. Can you trace it? I can try. 2 hours later, Sarah called back. Daniel, you're not going to believe this. The IP address belongs to a company called Brennan Digital Consulting. Daniel went cold. Brennan? As in Richard Brennan? Same family. The company's owned by his brother. They specialize in digital litigation support. He fabricated the evidence. Looks like it. But proving it in court is going to be nearly impossible. He's had 3 years to cover his tracks. Daniel hung up and immediately called Catherine. I know who set you up, he said. Richard Brennan. His brother's company accessed your email 3 years ago. They created the fake evidence. Catherine was silent for a long moment. Why would he do that? That's what we need to find out. Daniel spent the rest of the day digging into Richard Brennan's background. And what he found made his blood run cold. 5 years ago, Brennan had filed a massive class action lawsuit against another pharmaceutical company. He'd won $2 billion. 3 years ago, he'd done it again. Different company. Same result. $3 billion. And now, Monroe Pharmaceuticals. Brennan wasn't seeking justice. He was running a racket. Fabricating evidence, destroying companies, and collecting massive settlements. But Daniel still needed proof. That night, Daniel's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. Hello? Daniel Reed. The voice was distorted, electronic. You're making a mistake. Who is this? Someone trying to save your life. Catherine Monroe is guilty. The evidence is real. Stop defending her or you'll end up destroyed, just like she will. Brennan sent you? Brennan? This is bigger than Brennan. This is about maintaining order. Monroe Pharmaceuticals killed 17,000 people. Someone has to pay. Even if that someone is innocent? Nobody's innocent at that level. They all have blood on their hands. The line went dead. Daniel sat in his dark apartment, staring at his phone. The threat was clear. Keep fighting, and they'd destroy him. He thought about the man he'd prosecuted 8 years ago. The innocent man who died because the system failed him. He thought about Catherine Monroe, sitting alone in that courtroom, abandoned by everyone. And he made his decision. He wasn't walking away. The next morning, Daniel filed a motion to dismiss, citing fabricated evidence. Judge Dalton scheduled a hearing for that afternoon. The courtroom was packed again. The media smelled blood. Daniel stood before the judge. Your Honor, I have evidence that the email presented by the plaintiff was fabricated. My digital forensics expert can prove the metadata was altered. Brennan shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is desperate speculation. Then you won't mind if we examine the original server records, Daniel said. Brennan's face went pale for just a second. But he recovered quickly. The records will show exactly what I've already presented. Judge Dalton looked between them. Mr. Reed, can your expert testify today? Yes, Your Honor. Then call your witness. Sarah Chen took the stand. She walked the judge through the technical details. The timestamp inconsistencies. The altered metadata. The external IP access. And where did this external access originate? Daniel asked. Brennan Digital Consulting, Sarah said clearly. The courtroom erupted. Reporters started shouting. Camera flashes went off like lightning. Brennan was on his feet. This is absurd. My brother's company provides technical support for my cases. Of course there would be access. 3 years before the lawsuit was filed? Daniel said. 3 years before anyone even knew there was a problem with Cardaxil? That's quite the coincidence, Mr. Brennan. Judge Dalton slammed his gavel. Order. Mr. Brennan, I'm going to need an explanation. Your Honor, this is clearly a desperate attempt to. I asked for an explanation, not an excuse. Brennan had no answer. Judge Dalton's expression hardened. I'm ordering an independent investigation into the origins of this evidence. Until that investigation is complete, this trial is suspended. He struck his gavel. As the courtroom emptied, Brennan grabbed Daniel's arm. His friendly mask was gone. His eyes were cold. You just made the biggest mistake of your life, he said quietly. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You have no idea who you're dealing with. He walked away. Daniel stood there, his heart pounding. He'd just accused one of the most powerful attorneys in Boston of fabricating evidence. There was no going back now. That night, Daniel sat in his apartment going through every document, every piece of evidence, trying to understand the full scope of what he was up against. His phone rang. Catherine. Daniel, we need to talk. Now. What's wrong? Nina's missing. She didn't come to work today. She's not answering her phone. And her apartment is empty. Daniel felt ice in his veins. When did you last see her? Yesterday morning. Right after she gave you those server logs. I'm coming over. 30 minutes later, Daniel was back at Catherine's mansion. She looked terrified. What if they took her? Catherine said. What if they hurt her because she helped us? We don't know that's what happened. Then where is she? Daniel had no answer. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Just an address. What is it? Catherine asked. An address. In South Boston. Are you going? I have to. Then I'm coming with you. Catherine. She's my friend, Daniel. If she's in trouble because of me, I need to know. They drove through the dark streets of Boston, following the GPS to a warehouse district near the docks. The address led to an abandoned building, windows dark, chain-link fence rusted. This feels like a trap, Daniel said. I don't care. They got out of the car. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the warehouse was empty except for rows of old shipping containers. Moonlight filtered through broken skylights. Nina? Catherine called out. Her voice echoed. No response. They walked deeper into the building. Then Daniel saw it. A laptop, sitting on top of a crate, screen blowing in the darkness. Don't touch it, Daniel said. But Catherine was already opening it. On the screen was a video file. She clicked play. Nina appeared on screen. She was sitting in a dark room, her face bruised, her hands tied. Catherine, she said, her voice shaking. I'm so sorry. They made me do it. All of it. The emails, the evidence, everything. They said they'd kill my daughter if I didn't help them. Catherine gasped. Oh my God. Nina continued. Richard Brennan is working for someone much bigger. Someone who wants Monroe Pharmaceuticals destroyed. I don't know who. But they have people everywhere. In your company. In the government. Everywhere. The video cut to black. Then a new voice came through the speakers. Distorted. Electronic. Catherine Monroe. Daniel Reed. You're not dealing with a simple lawsuit. You're dealing with a coordinated effort to dismantle your company and seize its assets. Walk away now and Nina Parker lives. Continue fighting and she dies. You have 24 hours. The screen went black. Daniel and Catherine stood in the darkness, the weight of the threats settling over them. We have to stop, Catherine whispered. We have to save Nina. If we stop, they'll kill her anyway. She's a loose end now. Then what do we do? Daniel's mind raced. We find her. And we expose everyone involved. How? We don't even know who's behind this. Yes, we do. Daniel pulled out his phone. Nina said Brennan's working for someone who wants your company destroyed. Who would benefit most from that? Catherine thought for a moment. Our competitors. Apex Pharma. They tried to buy us out 2 years ago. We refused. Then that's where we start. Before Daniel could say anything else, his phone rang. Sarah Chen. Daniel, you need to see this. I kept digging into Brennan Digital Consulting. Guess who's on their client list? Apex Pharma. How did you know? Because it all makes sense now. Apex wanted Monroe Pharmaceuticals. Catherine refused to sell. So they decided to destroy her instead. Fabricate a scandal, tank her stock price, buy the company for pennies. It gets worse, Sarah said. I found payment records. Brennan has been receiving money from a shell company owned by Apex for the past 3 years. Millions of dollars. Can you trace it? Already did. And Daniel, one of the payments was made the same day Nina Parker started working on those fake emails. Daniel hung up and looked at Catherine. Brennan's been working for Apex this whole time. They paid him to destroy you. But the deaths, Catherine said. 17,000 people actually died. How does that fit? Daniel froze. What if the deaths were part of it? What? What if someone contaminated the drug supply deliberately? Made it look like your company's fault? Catherine stared at him. That's insane. Is it? Think about it. Cardaxil was safe for 8 years. Then suddenly people start dying. Only people with a specific genetic marker. What if someone targeted them on purpose? Who would do that? Someone who wanted to destroy your company badly enough to commit mass murder. They stood in the dark warehouse, the full horror of what they were uncovering settling over them. This wasn't just corporate espionage. This was mass murder. We need to go to the FBI, Catherine said. No. They said they have people everywhere. We can't trust anyone. Then what? Daniel looked at the laptop. We use this. We make it public. If everyone knows what's happening, they can't kill Nina without exposing themselves. He grabbed the laptop. They drove back to Catherine's mansion in silence, both of them processing the enormity of what they discovered. At the mansion, Daniel uploaded the video to every major news outlet he could find. Within an hour, it was trending nationwide. Pharmaceutical executive kidnapped in Monroe scandal. Conspiracy to frame Catherine Monroe? Mass murder plot alleged in Cardaxil case. The media exploded. And that's when things got dangerous. At 2 a.m., Daniel's phone rang. Brennan. You just signed Nina Parker's death warrant, he said coldly. Where is she? Somewhere you'll never find her. And when they find her body, everyone will blame you. Try it. The whole world is watching now. Then let them watch. The line went dead. Daniel looked at Catherine. We need to find her. Now. How? The video. Sarah can analyze it. Maybe there's something in the background that tells us where Nina is. He called Sarah. She answered on the first ring. I saw the news, she said. Send me the video. 10 minutes later, she called back. Daniel, I found something. In the reflection on Nina's eye, there's a window. I can see part of a building through it. Looks like an old factory. Red brick. Green door. Can you identify it? Working on it. Give me 20 minutes. Those 20 minutes felt like 20 hours. Finally, Sarah called. Got it. It's an old textile factory in Dorchester. Abandoned since 2010. Sending you the address now. Daniel and Catherine grabbed the address and drove through the empty streets of Boston at 3 in the morning. The factory loomed in the darkness, surrounded by rusted fences and broken glass. We should call the police, Catherine said. No time. If Brennan knows we're coming, he'll kill her. They slipped through a broken section of fence and approached the building. A green door hung crooked on one hinge. Inside, the factory was a maze of corridors and empty rooms. Moonlight cast strange shadows through broken windows. Then they heard it. A muffled voice. Crying. They followed the sound to a room at the back of the building. Nina was tied to a chair, tape over her mouth, terror in her eyes. Two men stood guard. They turned when Daniel and Catherine entered. Well, one of them said. Couldn't leave it alone, could you? Daniel stepped forward. Let her go. The man laughed. Or what? You'll bore us to death with legal arguments? No. A new voice came from behind them. Or I will. Everyone turned. Agent Marcus Webb stood in the doorway, FBI badge in one hand, gun in the other. Behind him were 6 more agents. FBI. Nobody move. The 2 guards tried to run. The agents tackled them instantly. Webb walked over to Nina and untied her. She collapsed into Catherine's arms, sobbing. How did you know we were here? Daniel asked. We've been investigating Richard Brennan for 2 years, Webb said. We knew he was dirty. We just couldn't prove it. Until you posted that video and gave us everything we needed. Before I tell you what happens next, let me ask you something. You just watched Daniel risk everything for the truth. And you're sitting there, watching for free, not subscribed? If you felt anything during this story, prove it. Subscribe right now. Because if you don't, you're saying stories about justice don't matter. The FBI raid on the textile factory made national headlines. Nina Parker rescued. 2 Apex Pharma operatives arrested. But Richard Brennan was still free. Agent Webb met Daniel and Catherine at FBI headquarters the next morning. We have Brennan's hired muscle, Webb said. But they're not talking. And without their testimony, we can't prove Brennan ordered the kidnapping. What about the video Nina made? Daniel asked. She was coerced. Defense will argue she was forced to lie. We need more. Then we get more, Daniel said. Sarah Chen found financial records linking Brennan to Apex Pharma. Millions in payments over 3 years. That proves corruption, not murder conspiracy. Catherine leaned forward. What if we can prove they contaminated the drug supply? My company keeps samples of every batch we manufacture. If we can test them and show deliberate tampering, that's your murder conspiracy. Webb nodded slowly. Can you access those samples? They're in our quality control facility. Climate-controlled vault. Every batch for the last 10 years. Then let's go. 2 hours later, they stood in Monroe Pharmaceuticals' quality control lab. Rows of refrigerated cabinets lined the walls, each containing thousands of vials. Dr. Lisa Huang, head of quality control, pulled samples from the batches that had caused deaths. These are from 3 years ago, she said. Batch numbers 774 through 812. The batches linked to patient deaths. She placed them under a mass spectrometer. The machine hummed to life. Daniel watched the readout. Numbers and chemical formulas he didn't understand scrolled across the screen. Dr. Huang's face went pale. Oh my God. What is it? Catherine asked. There's a compound here that shouldn't exist. A metabolite that only forms when cardaxyl interacts with a specific enzyme inhibitor. In English, please, Daniel said. Someone added a chemical to these batches. A chemical that would cause the drug to become toxic in patients with the CYP2D6 gene variant. This wasn't a side effect. This was deliberate poisoning. The room went silent. Can you prove it was added after manufacturing? Webb asked. The compound degrades over time. Based on the concentration levels, it was added approximately 6 months after the original manufacturing date. Long after the batches left our facility. Who had access to the drug supply chain? Daniel asked. Catherine pulled up records on her tablet. Distributors. Pharmacies. Anyone between our facility and the patients. And who manages your distribution contracts? Daniel asked. Catherine scrolled through documents. Then she stopped. Her face drained of color. What? Daniel asked. Our distribution contract. It was renegotiated 3 years ago. The new contractor was Apex Medical Logistics, a subsidiary of Apex Pharma, Webb said quietly. The pieces fell into place. Apex had poisoned the drug supply. Made it look like Monroe Pharmaceuticals' fault. Destroyed Catherine's reputation. All so they could buy her company for nothing. 17,000 people murdered as collateral damage in a corporate takeover. We need to arrest everyone involved, Webb said. Now. But before anyone could move, the lab doors burst open. Richard Brennan stood there, flanked by 2 men in suits. But these weren't lawyers. These were private security. Armed. Nobody moves, Brennan said calmly. Webb reached for his gun. One of the security men raised his weapon. Don't. Brennan, you're making this worse, Webb said. Worse? Brennan laughed. Agent Webb, I'm already looking at life in prison. It can't get worse. He walked to the center of the lab, his eyes on the vials. Those samples. That's what you're using to build your case, isn't it? It's over, Brennan, Daniel said. We have proof. We have witnesses. Walk away now and maybe you get a deal. A deal? Brennan's face twisted with rage. I don't need a deal. I need those samples destroyed. He pulled out a gun. Catherine stepped in front of the samples. You'll have to go through me. If that's what it takes. Daniel moved before thinking. He stepped between Brennan and Catherine. You want to shoot someone? Shoot me. But you're not destroying that evidence. Daniel, don't, Catherine whispered. You think I won't? Brennan said, his gun aimed at Daniel's chest. I've already killed 17,000 people. What's 3 more? You didn't kill them, Daniel said quietly. Apex did. You just helped them cover it up. But pulling that trigger? That's murder. First degree. Premeditated. You do this, there's no walking away. Brennan's hand shook. I had no choice. Apex offered me $50 million. $50 million. For one case. So you sold out. You fabricated evidence. You helped them murder thousands of innocent people. For money. It wasn't supposed to go this far, Brennan said, his voice cracking. They said they'd just tank her stock price. They didn't tell me about the contamination until it was too late. By then, I was already in too deep. Then help us now, Daniel said. Testify. Tell us everything. You might save yourself. Or I destroy the evidence and walk away. You really think we only have one copy? Catherine said. This is a pharmaceutical company. We document everything. Multiple samples. Multiple locations. You can't destroy them all. Brennan's face crumbled. He knew she was right. Put the gun down, Webb said firmly. Last chance. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Brennan lowered the gun. I want full immunity. Not happening, Webb said. But I'll talk to the prosecutors. Cooperation might get you 20 years instead of life. Brennan looked at the gun in his hand. At the samples. At Daniel and Catherine standing between him and escape. He dropped the gun. I'll tell you everything. 3 weeks later, Daniel stood in the same courtroom where everything had started. But this time, the atmosphere was completely different. Richard Brennan sat at the defendant's table. Next to him were three executives from Apex Pharma, including CEO Marcus Vance. The charges were read: conspiracy to commit murder, 17,000 counts, fraud, evidence tampering. The list went on for 10 minutes. The trial lasted 6 weeks. Brennan testified for the prosecution, detailing every step of the conspiracy. How Apex had approached him. How they'd paid him to fabricate evidence against Catherine. How they'd contaminated the drug supply themselves. The evidence was overwhelming. Financial records. Email chains. The chemical analysis of the poisoned batches. Witness testimony from Nina Parker and others who'd been coerced into participating. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty. On all counts. Marcus Vance got life without parole. The other Apex executives got 25 to 40 years. Brennan, for his cooperation, got 20 years. As they led them away, Vance looked at Catherine one last time. "You should have just sold," he said. "Would have saved everyone a lot of trouble." Catherine didn't respond. What was there to say to a man who'd killed 17,000 people over a business deal? After the trial, Daniel and Catherine stood on the courthouse steps, facing a wall of reporters and cameras. "Miss Monroe," one reporter shouted. "How does it feel to be vindicated?" Catherine stepped up to the microphones. "Vindication doesn't bring back the 17,000 people who died. Doesn't undo the pain their families suffered. What happened was a tragedy that never should have occurred. What's next for Monroe Pharmaceuticals? We're implementing new security protocols. Independent testing at every stage of distribution. Genetic screening for all new medications. And we're creating a foundation to support the families of victims." "And what about you, Mr. Reed?" another reporter called. "The driver who became a lawyer. What's your next move?" Daniel looked at Catherine. They'd talked about this. "I'm joining Monroe Pharmaceuticals as general counsel," he said. "But more than that, we're starting a legal defense fund. For people who can't afford lawyers. For people facing rigged systems. For anyone who needs someone to stand up and say, 'I will defend you.'" The questions continued, but Daniel stepped back. He'd said what he needed to say. As the press conference ended, Nina Parker approached them. She looked healthier now. The bruises had healed. The fear in her eyes had been replaced with something else. Purpose. "Thank you," she said to Daniel. "For not giving up. For finding me." "Thank you for being brave enough to tell the truth," Daniel replied. "I've been thinking," Nina said. "About the foundation Catherine's starting. I want to run it. I want to make sure what happened to me never happens to anyone else." Catherine smiled. "The Nina Parker Patient Safety Foundation. I can't think of anyone better to lead it." They stood together on the courthouse steps. 3 people who'd almost been destroyed by corruption. Who'd fought back and won. But Daniel knew the fight wasn't over. Somewhere out there, another corporation was cutting corners. Another lawyer was fabricating evidence. Another innocent person was about to be destroyed. And someone would need to stand up for them. His phone rang. Sarah Chen. "Daniel, you're not going to believe what I just found." "What?" "Remember those Brennan digital consulting records?" I kept digging. "They have 23 other active cases. Same pattern. Fabricated evidence. Targeted companies. All of them about to be destroyed." Daniel looked at Catherine and Nina. "How many people are going to lose everything?" "Hundreds. Maybe thousands." "And Daniel, some of these cases go back 10 years. This network is massive. Send me everything. This is going to take years to unravel. Then we'd better get started." He hung up and turned to Catherine. Sarah found more cases. Dozens of them. All using Brennan's playbook. Catherine didn't hesitate. Then we fight them all. It's going to take everything we have. Good thing we're not doing it alone. Nina stepped forward. Count me in. Whatever you need. Daniel looked at the three of them. A CEO who'd almost lost her company. An assistant who'd been kidnapped and coerced. And a driver who'd rediscovered why he became a lawyer in the first place. Not the most conventional legal team. But maybe that's what the system needed. People who'd been through hell and refused to let it break them. All right, Daniel said. Let's go save some lives. 6 months later, Daniel sat in his office at Monroe Pharmaceuticals. The office still felt too big, too fancy. But he'd gotten used to it. On his desk were files. 23 of them. Each one a case where Brennan's network had fabricated evidence to destroy innocent companies. They'd won 4 cases so far. Exposed 2 more corrupt lawyers. Saved 3 companies from bankruptcy. 19 cases to go. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Mr. Reed, my name is Thomas Martinez. My company is being sued for environmental violations I didn't commit. My lawyers just quit. I saw your interview. Can you help me? Daniel stared at the message. Another person abandoned by the system. Another fight. He typed back. Send me everything you have. I'll look at it tonight. A second message came through. Thank you. You don't know what this means. But Daniel did know. Because 6 months ago, he'd been the one watching someone sit alone in a courtroom, abandoned and afraid. And he'd made a choice. To stand up. To speak out. To defend someone who couldn't defend themselves. That choice had changed everything. Not just for Catherine Monroe. But for Daniel himself. He looked at the city stretching out beyond his window. Somewhere out there, someone else was facing their own impossible battle. Fighting their own corrupt system. And maybe, just maybe, they'd find someone willing to fight beside them. Because that's what justice really meant. Not perfect systems or flawless laws. Just ordinary people making the choice to stand up when everyone else walks away. Daniel opened Thomas Martinez's file and got to work. The fight was far from over. But for the first time in 8 years, Daniel Reed was exactly where he needed to be. The end. If this story moved you, drop a comment telling us what you would fight for. Here's the truth, most of you watching aren't subscribed. You'll miss the next story about ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Subscribe. Because next time, you might need someone to stand up for you. Thank you for watching. Remember, you're never too ordinary to do something extraordinary. Never too broken to begin again. And never, ever powerless. The only question is, will you stand up? Will you subscribe to stand with those who do?